Hello and welcome to episode number 69 of the Wise Guys podcast. I'm John Tortorelli with my co-host Brendan Capozziello. No Justin Ray for today, but he's going to be back for our next one, number 70. And today we have much to discuss: the AFC and NFC championship games, who will win, and most importantly, who will be going home, because these are four elite teams. Then we're going to talk about some of the coaching turnover in the NFL. The Patriots getting Mac Jones a legitimate offensive coordinator. The Browns hiring Jim Schwartz. And we didn't really talk about Greg Roman being fired. He's been a topic of discussion on the show. And last but not least, Anthony Davis last night returned in the Lakers' win versus the Spurs. You know, I usually want to gorge my eyes out watching San Antonio play this season, but this was one of those rare exceptions of a game where AD made an immediate impact with Rui Hachimura's Lakers debut. Brandon, did you catch the Laker game last night, man?
Sadly, no. I was
Yeah,
in
you didn't
bed
really
by
miss
that
too
time.
much.
That's it. Those 10:30 start times, man, on the East Coast, they kill me, man.
They do.
It's tough, bro.
I was up until 1:30 in the morning because of it.
Yeah. See,
And AD
that's
played great, and Rui actually had himself a pretty good game as well. But I'm like, wait, it's 12:30, and we're still in the third quarter here. Come on. Oh, man.
Yeah, see, I do those for the UFC, and that's enough for me.
On a Saturday night, not a
Yeah,
Wednesday night.
yeah.
Yeah, this is
That's better
actually
for me.
the rivals week in the NBA. So we had Ben Simmons chirping with Joel Embiid, the Grizzlies at Warriors. Steph got ejected for throwing his mouthpiece. And then, of course, we had the Lakers versus Spurs. Just an absolute showtime of a game. So
This is
first,
this is a rivalry week, that new thing that they implemented.
yeah. So
It
tonight,
started on Monday.
I believe it would have started on Monday.
Okay. Wow. I
Because
saw a little bit of that, but it wasn't like I didn't see major, I didn't see a lot of people talking about that. Interesting.
not really, because without the midseason tournament they're trying to implement, the games are not that relevant in January. Like, it's key for these front offices because we got the trade deadline 2.5 weeks from now, but fans don't care, literally at all. And that's the thing. Like, we had Jimmy Butler sit out in the other game. I think it was on Tuesday for the
Yeah,
Heat.
yeah.
And it was just because, like, back soreness. You don't know nowadays whether a player's legitimately hurt or if they're just resting. And
Hmm.
so it makes the regular season just even more confounding a topic. It's
Yep.
too long. The fans aren't really that into it. The teams usually do not care unless they're the Suns and
Yep.
or the Jazz. And really, it's so much harder to, I guess, be a better business and really get the most for your fans, the best possible product when you're playing it's not possible to play 82 games and then a postseason. And for these premier teams, it gets tougher and tougher year in and year out, given
Yep.
how much we've learned about what it takes to be a durable
Right.
player long term.
Yeah. I'm all for shortening the season. I believe the season should be shortened. 82 games is just unnecessary. It's not. Yeah, it's just unnecessary for me. Like it dilutes the product, in my opinion. Too much is not always, better.
Mm-hmm.
Less is more is a very key phrase in life itself, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I'm down for a shorter season. NBA, they'll have their discussions. Maybe they can be convinced. It's going to be hard because there's a lot of money being left on the table because of TV deals and whatnot. But yeah, that's a bunch of business talk that I'm not really.
Well, speaking of business, that's why in 2026, which is the expected year for the new TV deal to really kick in, so
Hmm.
they're probably going to smooth the cap, so it's like a $10 million increase each and every single season, and then that would allow them to maybe shorten the season with the in-season tournament, so it's less games, but the quality of those performances mean more, and then teams
Yeah.
will try more.
Did they start the in-season tournament? Is it this year or is it
No,
when?
they're playing obviously, but the in-season tournament, it probably wouldn't come for a couple of years. They're discussing it right now. But we'd
Okay.
probably know by the end of the season whether or not they're going to add it in, I think, from the
Yeah,
meetings they're already having.
gotcha, gotcha.
Talking about meetings, we're here to talk about football at first. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
a conflicting start to the show. My apologies. We have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Invitational, 5 straight
Oh, come
years.
on.
Unbelievable. I feel like we're getting to a point where Justin has said it before, and I've said it. Kansas City is the new New England. But there's a boogeyman, my friend. And that boogeyman is Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mhm.
I've told you before, I said it once, and I'll say it twice. The Bengals defense is Super Bowl material.
Mhm.
Lou Anarumo is one of, if not maybe the best defensive coordinator in football. He has done a phenomenal job this season. And Cincinnati up front last week smashed the Bills without Daquan Jones. I look at this matchup, BC, and the biggest factor is Patrick Mahomes' health. We'll start with Kansas City. He has a high ankle sprain, and typically when you see this injury, it takes up to a month to heal. Now, this guy's built different. He's built like Big Ben, let's be honest. The last time he had one in 2019, a week later, an opening night or opening day of the game, he throws 4 touchdowns versus the Raiders, and that was literally a week after suffering that injury. But man, this Bengals defense is one of the most physical in football. Up front, the secondary is going to play tough. And I look what they got: safety, Von Bell, Jesse Bates. They can match up with Travis Kelce. For me in this matchup, it is crucial. I mean everything. They get Isaiah Pacheco going early. He has been a really good player for them this season. And last week versus the Jaguars, over 90 rushing yards. They need to establish that run, especially in this point in the season. You can't be one-dimensional with a quarterback, the best player in football, arguably, on one leg. I know he's still great. He threw a touchdown pass in spite of it, but you want to work Mahomes into the game. And now, if there's anything Andy Reid knows, it's probably that. And we also don't know what Patrick Mahomes is really going to look like. What percentage will he be at? But for me in this game, against DJ Reader and one of the best run-stopping teams in the league in Cincinnati, this is going to be a matchup that depends on the Chiefs' tackles, I think. I believe they'll do their job up front, but Orlando Brown, he really struggled to start last week's game at left tackle. At large this year for the Chiefs, the tackle positions, they've been a turnstile. I mean, Orlando gave up 4 or 5 pressures in the first 2 quarters, but in the second half, they started to do a better job up front. Given Patrick Mahomes was down, motivated them a little bit. For Orlando, he did a way better job. If they struggle with the tackle spots, this game honestly could be a multi-score game in favor of Cincinnati. And I really want to highlight this to the Chiefs as well. I think Juju Smith-Schuster, he really needs to have a big-time game as well, setting that tone. The Bengals are physical, but so is he. And when I saw him in the postseason in Pittsburgh, I always knew this guy's going to play harder than almost anybody. And I feel like for the Chiefs, that's the 2 biggest X factors here: Isaiah Pacheco and Juju Smith-Schuster. But shout out Kadarius Toney as well.
So I disagree with you. You and Justin have said that Kansas City is the new New England. Let's everybody slow our rolls, please. But in terms of this game, the history between these 2 quarterbacks, these 2 teams over the past I guess year and a half is well known. Joe Burrow 3-0 versus Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. In those games, just to peek behind the stats, Joe Burrow in those 3 games, 72% completion percentage, 327.3 yards per game, and an 8-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And what's crazy is he had one, I think it was last year's AFC Championship game, where his completion percentage was about 60.5%. And that's the one that brought it real down. His other 2 games, he was like 77%, 80%. So it would have been even higher. Mahomes in those games, 67.3%, 252.3 yards per game, and a 6-to-2 touchdown to interception ratio. So all close. The yardage surprises you with Mahomes. He's only averaging 252. That's a little surprising. But Cincinnati's defense is that good, and they're able to, cause some havoc and play a very good, sound defense on the Kansas City Chiefs. One guy I want to point out that I saw like a highlight video. I didn't know about this guy. Mike Hilton on the Cincinnati Bengals, cornerback, number 21, 5'9", $184.
Special.
I mean, I saw his tackling ability. He lays the boom. He made a great hit on Josh Allen. He made a couple other great hits. I mean, listen, man, if you got that dog in you, I like this guy. So I'm going to be keeping a keen eye out on this game for number 21, Mike Hilton.
He was actually in the Patriots practice squad, believe it or not, in 2017. They let him go to Jacksonville. Jacksonville let him go to Pittsburgh, and with the Steelers, he emerged into one of the best nickel players in the league. And the Steelers let him go because they had that Big Ben cap hit. If Ben were to retire a year earlier, Mike Gillen right now would still be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
So he feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler too. Yeah.
Was about.
um, Another reason I hate the Cincinnati Bengals for John. Uh, for me for this game, it kind of comes down to two things. On the offensive side for Kansas City, it comes down to how will Patrick Mahomes play with the injury, like you said. And what we haven't highlighted is it's a high ankle sprain, but it's his right foot, and that's his plant foot. So that's going to be very difficult. And also his movement, we all know he's John calls him the greatest off-script quarterback in NFL history. So I don't know how much he's going to be able to use his legs. It's going to be tough for Patty out there. I don't envy him at all. I do think he's going to test the ankle because I think that's just his instinct, and he's a tough SOB. But I don't think it's going to go well for him, man. Like I think Cincinnati being able to get the pressure up the middle, and they got Hendrickson off the edge. That's going to be tough. I know you talked about. I like Orlando Brown. I think he's a good player. All in all, I agree with John. He had a terrible game last week. So Hendrickson, better pass rusher than what the Jaguars got. He could probably take advantage. Most likely, he's going to be able to take advantage of Orlando Brown next week. Or this week upcoming. Go ahead.
There's no doubt. I mean, the other thing too with this matchup is Cincinnati up front's getting healthy. For Ted Karras and Alex Kappa. Kappa last week was Karras. Which one of them played? I know Jonah.
Karras is the center. He played. He got banged up a little bit.
Right.
Had to put on a brace, I think.
So he's a full participant this week in practice. Kappa looks like he could return. Jonah Williams is somehow questionable as well, which is unbelievable with his knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the Bengals offensive line that really stepped up last week in spite of all the injuries. And for this Chiefs defense to go along with the running game, they had to play sound this week. When Pat got hurt last week, they did a pretty good job. Not a perfect. There were some plays, I mean, especially Trevor Lawrence, some of the hits he was taking. I know Joe Burrow is going to get those roughing the passer calls that Trevor Lawrence did not. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities by that Jaguars team. So for Kansas City defensively, they need to be sound. They can't have crucial turnovers late in the game because I think their defense is the way they do win this game alongside the running game. Yeah. Like you said, Pat, I have a tough time seeing him just create plays out of structure. And like you said before, really planting, moving around, constantly turning, changing directions. So they're probably going to need to win the turnover battle. That's number one. 2, win the running game. And I think the third biggest thing is the Bengals, they can't go over 24 points. I don't think this Kansas City offense, no Tyreek Hill can get over that amount. And that's why I had the Bengals winning this matchup 31-24. I think it'll be closer than the 7-point spread, but really for the Cincinnati team, people need to recognize it. Cincinnati is the best team in football. With all these injuries, I think it can go a couple different ways. The 49ers and the Eagles have special rosters. But so do the Bengals. Like, the gap between the Bengals and Eagles defense, I don't think is wide much. Because they're so well coached, their offense is so dynamic, and they can beat you in 4 different ways. Joe Burrow is by far, I think, with Patrick Mahomes being neutralized, the best quarterback on the field right now. And that's not the shot at Mahomes, but, I mean, how good is Mahomes at 70% relative to Joe Burrow? I think is worse. So, all things considered from Cincinnati, I think they're going to probably win the turnover battle in this game. And more importantly, I think that defense is going to do a pretty solid job.
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I a little bit disagree with the distance between the Eagles defense and the Cincinnati defense. I think Cincinnati's good all the way around.
Sure.
They just play great football. I just think the Eagles have much bigger names, and they've got those big playmakers out there like a Fletcher Cox and a Hassan Riddick now.
Much better corners.
And Darius Slay, obviously, and Bradbury. And I agree with you. The other thing that I was going to mention, and you hit on it, was the Cincinnati offensive line. While Ted Karras is going to play, their left guard is going to play, which is their 2 last starters on the offensive line that have been playing. And like you said, Ted Karras got banged up. He had to put on a knee brace last week, I'm pretty sure. Kappa hasn't practiced. He's still dealing with the ankle injury. He's questionable, but he's been questionable for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. or however long it's been. You got Jonah Williams. I think he's got the dislocated kneecap. I think that's an injury. I know it's a kneecap. I don't know if it was dislocated or fractured or whatever it was, but I don't see him playing. I'm just going to be honest. I do not see him playing. I don't know how he's questionable, but yeah. So you're guaranteed you're going to have your center and your left guard, and then probably your backups are going to be there.
Mm.
Kappa, maybe. I mean, maybe.
Now
But
with
you're going up. Go ahead.
no, you're good.
Oh, okay. But you're going up against the number 2 sack team in all of football.
Mm.
Number 1 is Philadelphia with 70. They led the pack. They blew the pack out of the water. But Kansas City was number 2 with 55 sacks. Chris Jones, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Frank Clark, all those boys. That they got a better, let's just say they got a much better pass rush than what the Buffalo Bills put out against Cincinnati. And it's going to be a tougher game for that offensive line to really produce. I think they're going to have to lean a little bit like they did last week, like on Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, he needs to have a good game. What's his name? P. Ryan. He
Najee.
needs that. Yep, he needs to have a good game. And then obviously those corner, but I think Cincinnati can take advantage of Kansas City's corners if Joe Burrow has enough time in the pocket. I think those receivers are just too good, and I don't think Kansas City's corners are really on that level to compete with those receiving weapons of Cincinnati. So I got Cincinnati in this game. I agree. I think it's going to be close. I got Cincinnati 27-24.
Okay, so we're a little bit below me. The one last thing, dude, this Chiefs, the defense when it comes to stopping the run is going to be a lot better than Buffalo. Buffalo is probably missing their best run stopping defensive end and Daquan Jones, and that really sent them into a tailspin. There was one play I saw with Jackson Carman who replaced Jonah Williams at left tackle where he basically just takes Trayman Edmonds on I believe it was a sweep to the left side, and just sends him 5 feet out of bounds in the shadow realm. It was amazing. Now Carman, he's definitely not Jonah, but given Jonah's neutralized down below, I think he probably could hold up fine in this matchup. We'll see with these Chiefs pass rushers.
Yeah.
Jerry has the Chiefs
Mm-hmm.
losing because Joe Burr is going to be as cool as a cucumber. So that's his pick. I don't know what the score was for him, but that was what.
Yeah, I forgot what he gave.
So all three of us, man, are taking the
All
Bengals
three
here.
of us are Cincinnati. Yep.
Whew, how quickly the tide can turn for the NFL, man. I mean, I feel like 2 months ago, all of us had the Chiefs as the best team in the AFC.
Well, here's the question then. I know the answer for me. If Patrick Mahomes was 100% healthy, John, would you pick Kansas City to win the game?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I, I think I would say no, honestly,
No.
with you. I feel
Yeah.
like last week in Jacksonville, they did a great job late, and they have a great team.
Mm-hmm.
But Cincinnati is way more dynamic on the outside. Their defense is a step above, especially when it comes to stopping the run. The last thing is, I think this Bengals defense, what Lou Anarumo does is throws off opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen last week put up 10 points against Cincinnati at home. So I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, bro. I think the Bengals would beat the Chiefs either way because of their dynamicism and that defensive coordinator. Like, he's not in head coaching consideration, but he has done a phenomenal job this season with the horses he does have. And it's really a credit to the culture that's really been set on that side of the ball. The Bengals are really in both ends almost.
Mm-hmm.
Almost on defense. I would say they're Super Bowl material. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So,
No, they play real hard, and
mhm.
they play above of what they are.
They
Uh
do punch above their weight, yeah.
yep. But
Talk.
yeah, I agree with you. That's my answer too. I would have picked the Cincinnati Bengals regardless of the injury to Patrick Mahomes. I think it would have been a probably higher scoring game if Mahomes was healthy. But I still would have taken Cincinnati because I just think Cincinnati is the better overall team. They got much better weapons. They got a better run game.
Hmm.
Like you said, their defense is better. So I like Cincinnati's chances right now, and I think that they're just built to go on the road and beat teams. He's Joe Cool for a reason. He's got 1,000 nicknames now.
He got a lot of nicknames. Speaking about nicknames, one that I like to use for Brock Purdy in San Francisco is
Mm,
Mr. Impossible. I
mm.
like that one. The Eagles will be hosting the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday afternoon before the Bengals at Chiefs game. And I'll be honest with you, BC, this is going to be one of the most tight knit and confusing games to predict because it's going to go someplace that we do not expect. We're going to see some turnovers by one side. We're going to see one team, both of whom are good at running the football, outdo the other. And I think whoever runs this game is going to be the team that generates more explosive plays. Both of these offenses are explosive. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Jalen Hurts. He's coming off the shoulder injury last week versus the Giants. He didn't have to do too much. But man, D'Amico Ryans, San Francisco 49ers, Fred Warner, and Nick Bosa last week. Then for the Eagles, man, they have a complete unit, all things considered. I'm going to kick it to you first things first. This might be the two best teams personnel-wise in football. What are your biggest takeaways, biggest notes coming into this game Sunday afternoon?
So you said it. This is a tough game to predict for you, but for me, it's not. Um, I guess I'll just spoil it for you. Philadelphia is winning this game. I
Really?
got I got no doubt in my mind. And it's because of what I saw last week. Not in the Philadelphia Giants game. I could give a crap less about that
Mm,
game.
that was
It was
pounding.
what I saw in Dallas and San Francisco game. So what I saw was Dallas's run defense has been their kryptonite all year. And they were able to stymie the run for the San Francisco 49ers for about three and a half, about 3 quarters. Late in the third quarter is when they started to really give it up. And in the fourth quarter, San Fran really started to open up on them. But they held up for a very long time. Now, the Eagles' run defense has also been a little bit of a weak point for them. I think the Eagles can kind of duplicate what the Dallas Cowboys did. I think they have a much better defensive line than the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you got Fletcher Cox and Ndamukong Suh, um, a
Javon
bunch,
Hargrave,
yeah,
Joshua on the outside, Brandon Graham,
yep.
Jordan Davis too.
Jordan
Most
Davis,
of the season,
yep,
top
Milton
overall pick.
Williams. They got a bunch of Linval Joseph, who's just a veteran, big guy, nose tackle, and Robert Quinn, veteran. He's back. He's healthy. He's more of a pass rusher, but he can make plays for you that here and there.
Come off the pine for 7 plays,
They've
generate
got
two
so
pressures.
many freaking guys, dude. But I'll get to that. So the Eagles' run defense is going to have to hold up on that front against the run game. I think they can do a good job. CMC is doing very good. But if you saw last week, he's still on
Half
the
contusion.
sideline. He's stretching that out, trying to keep it warm.
Both he and Elijah Mitchell didn't practice on Wednesday.
Now
Mitchell,
I expect everybody to play. I expect them all to play. The guys on the San Francisco front, I expect them to play. But I'm just saying, it can hamper you, especially when you're going up against these big dudes. And dude, Ndamukong Suh, man, he don't play around. Linval Joseph's big boy. All right, that's so close to 300 pounds. You don't want on top of you. So on the other side, though, San Francisco's run game was arguably the best. It was them in Tennessee. They were able to shut down Dallas's running attack on offense. Mostly to do with, Tony Pollard going down, but they were able to stymie it and really shut it down. I believe this. Listen, Philly's run game, Dallas's run game. If Tony Pollard's healthy, I think they're on the same wavelength in terms of running backs.
Yeah.
But now you add Jalen Hurts into the mix, and I think that Philadelphia's running attack is going to be able to take advantage of San Francisco's run defense because of that added factor of Jalen Hurts.
He has a
They're going to have,
numbers advantage.
huh?
He does present a numbers advantage.
Yep. Because now you're playing real 11-11 on 11-on-11 football.
Hmm.
You look like you want to say something.
No, I'm looking at some of the stats, some of the data right now. The other thing too with that Eagles defensive front, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth here.
What's
As
that?
Mike Tomlin says, with a storm, you may be prepared for it. That doesn't mean it's going to stop coming. So yeah, the Eagles got a lot of big boys, but all of those guys are some of the best in football at their respective positions, and they're going to
Hmm.
come from the edge, and they're just really balanced all around. It's just like there's no weak spot on that defensive front, that front seven, that specifically I think CMC and this 49ers team can attack. It's going to be on the outside. That's the way this 49ers offense is run, but this is probably the toughest matchup for the Niners, I think, all
Hmm.
season long.
Yeah, and well, I think it's the toughest matchup for both teams. Both teams are going at it. Well, like I've said for the past couple of weeks, these are both the best teams in my opinion in terms of personnel, coaching, everything. I think these are the two best teams. Um, but like you mentioned when you first kicked off this segment, I mean, you said explosive plays, and my first thing that I wrote down was San Francisco's defense allowed 98 explosive plays. That was fourth fewest. The Philadelphia Eagles offense had 80 explosive plays. That was second to Kansas City. So you said it's going to come down to some explosive plays. Well, we got one of the best defenses in not allowing explosive plays, and one of the best offenses in getting explosive plays. And that brings me to my point of the Philly passing attack. They had the ninth passing attack in yards per game this year. And like I said last week, and I talked about Dallas and San Fran, I thought Dallas could have been able to take advantage of San Francisco's passing defense in terms of their secondary, more of their cornerbacks, because that's really, if you look at it, those are the weak points. They're not like terrible players or anything, but like compared to everything else on San Francisco's defense, those are the weak points, the cornerbacks. So I thought they would be able to take advantage of that. Now, CeeDee Lamb, he took advantage of that. He had a big day, like we talked about. We also forget in round one in the wild card game, Seattle played against San Francisco. DK Metcalf had an incredible game. He had 10 receptions, I believe, for a buck 30 something. I think he had a touchdown too.
Big time.
Yep. Now, guess what? Guess who San Francisco's got to go up against this week? Because those last two matchups, they really had to only worry about CeeDee Lamb killing them and DK Metcalf killing him. I know Tyler Lockett's there. I know Dalton Schultz and those guys are there, but they didn't have big games.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have to worry about Devonta Smith. They got to worry about A.J. Brown, and they got to worry about Dallas Goedert.
That one-handed grab Goddard had early in that game versus the Giants was filthy.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I think that the offensive attack of Philadelphia is just as good as San Francisco's. They've got a complete offense. The offensive line is one of the best, if not the best in the league. It's right there. They got guys. Dude, Jason Kelsey, I mean, he's been a staying point for the last decade, I guess, almost as one of the best centers, if not the best center in football. Lane Johnson, I know he's injured with that groin, but he's playing through it and he's playing tough, and he makes a difference. Like if you look at the numbers of the Eagles since Lane Johnson has been on them from when was he drafted? 2012, 2013, I think, around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Since he's been on there, the numbers don't lie. When Lane Johnson doesn't play, the Philadelphia Eagles are a different offense.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely different. He's playing.
Yeah, 2013 for Lane. I mean, they've always filled in the guard spots as well, from Brandon Brooks to what they have now. I think for San Francisco, you're right on the point that Jarvis Ward and Demondre Lenore, those are two corners that have a pretty tall task this week. Because not only do you have A.J. Brown, but Devontae Smith is a stud. He is such a good athlete. His ability to create plays outside the boundary, I think that's the player that's going to beat the Niners this week. If anybody from Philadelphia is going to really go off, much like we saw versus the Giants, Adoree Jackson can do a solid job. And AJ, he didn't look right in that game per se. I think Devontae Smith is quickly emerging as that 1B. And so this week for him, I'm expecting 100-plus yards. I think Jalen Hurts has 200-plus passing yards, more than last week. But maybe the biggest player to look out for in this game would be Miles Sanders because of his ability to break a big-time play. And I also have...
He's dealing with an injury too, I think, right? Miles Sanders.
That's why, yeah, Kenneth Gainwell last week led him in carries and yards. Your prediction for this game is?
Well, I want to get to my last point, basically. My main point, what I was building to, is why I believe so much that San Francisco is going to lose this game and Philly's going to win. This is my main point and what I took away from that Dallas Cowboys game. Dallas Cowboys had one good, or he is a great player, but good or better cornerback in that game, Trayvon Diggs. Their cornerback 2 and their cornerback 3 were out. They're playing with backups. That's what the San Francisco 49ers were able to take advantage. Again, somebody can correct me if they want. I watched that whole game. I only remember the dropped interception as the only target against Trayvon Diggs that entire game. I really could not remember any other targets to him, which is a great game plan. But guess who you're going against this week, John? The best cornerback duo in the NFL. Not only that, the best secondary in the NFL. The best defense, passing defense in yards allowed per game. Number 1, 180 yards per game. You're going up against Darius Slay, Big Play Slay as they call him, and James Bradbury, who was the second-team All-Pro this year, I believe. You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety. And the best pass rush in the NFL. I know we named a couple of them. I had them all written down right here. I just want to go over, just to get you guys to understand how many fresh legs that they can throw at you. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Brandon Graham, Hargrave, Linval Joseph, Robert Quinn, and Ndamukong Suh, Josh Sweat, Milton Davis, Hassan Reddick. That's an insane amount of pass rush and run stoppers that they can throw at you.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned Hassan Reddick before. He's kind of been a awesome player this season.
Yeah, he's been their best pass rusher all season.
Yeah.
So was it 16.5 sacks, I think, or 17.5 sacks?
Yeah, and I think it was 2 or 3 years ago the Cardinals were trying to make him inside linebacker.
Yeah. But again, so many names that they can throw at you and fresh legs that they can throw at you. For me, Brock Purdy is going to turn the ball over this game. He threw at least two that I can remember turnover-worthy plays in that Dallas Cowboys game. Mm-hmm. They weren't able to take advantage of them. I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will be able to take advantage of them because, for me, you're not going to be able to have Debo or Brandon Ayuk and put him up against a cornerback that is lacking in the Philadelphia Eagles. George Kittle might be able to get a little bit of his. You might be able to expose some things there.
Mm-hmm.
But the receiving-wise, I think that it's going to be a much, much tougher task for those receivers in San Francisco. So I think the Eagles are going to win the turnover battle. I think Hurts is going to outplay Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
That's another major factor for me is that the quarterback play. Both teams are very comparable, right? I said that from the beginning. But the one difference that we can point at and be like, oh, right there, quarterback. Jalen Hurts is more proven than Brock Purdy. People were talking about Jalen Hurts being an MVP. My host right now said Jalen Hurts should have been the MVP not even, I think, 4 weeks ago. So I know a lot of John likes to say it's a team sport. It's the ultimate team sport, and I agree. It is. Defense wins championships, but quarterbacks win Super Bowls. And it comes down to whose quarterback plays better at the end of the day. And I believe Jalen Hurts is going to be play better than Brock Purdy. I got a final score of 28-24. Philadelphia Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Well, it's a good thing this ain't the Super Bowl, Brandon. The 49ers are winning this game.
No, they're not.
They are. And here's why. Jalen Hurts last week versus the Giants defense looked pretty good, right? But in this matchup versus the San Francisco 49ers defense, he has not seen something like it this season. Now, you would say that, Brock Purdy also hasn't necessarily seen something like this Eagles defense, but Brock Purdy's not coming off a shoulder injury. Brock Purdy's not working his way back. And I think maybe the biggest thing here is Brock Purdy last week had his worst game of the season against the Dallas Cowboys. It's also the same quarterback that in his playoff debut threw 3 touchdown passes versus a really good Seahawks secondary with Tariq Woolen. And you know what I say with these weapons, Bren? They have better weapons, though not by a wide margin, than the Eagles. And given A.J. Brown last week wasn't at full swing, and I do think Devontae Smith is going to have himself 100-plus yards, I look at Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, and said to myself, they're going to do the heavy lifting as they have all season long. It's no surprise that Brock Purdy's job is going to be simplified because of the role he's in. He's the third, fourth, fifth reason they're going to win games. But that's the thing. This year, he's shown the ability to hit a kill shot. I think in this game, it's going to be low scoring, and San Francisco will win because their defense will be the one that wins the turnover battle. You talked about some of the Eagles' injuries, Lane Johnson, too. I really think you're overlooking a 49ers defense with Fred Warner, who last week gave Dak Prescott trouble. And this week against Jalen Hurts, I think it's going to be much the same. You could talk about maybe the quarterback being better, Brandon, but I'll be honest with you, who is the better head coach? 49ers or Kyle Shanahan. And I don't think it's by a wide margin, but you talk about the defenses, which unit is better, I'll lean San Francisco any day of the week. You talk about the weapons, I'm also going with the Niners. Offensive line, who's going to protect Brock Purdy, and who is going to be the one reducing the role of Hassan Reddick, let's say? Well, Trent Williams is pretty damn good. All things considered, Brock Purdy will have a better day than Jalen Hurts, not because he's a better quarterback, but because the Eagles are a worse team. And I think in the biggest of moments, Brock Purdy, that man is going to shine and lead the San Francisco 49ers team to the Super Bowl. Something Jay Ray predicted after a 3-4 start. You know what's going to happen for these Niners, Bren? You know what's going to happen? They're going to win their 16th game of the season. And that will lead them to the Super Bowl against the Cincinnati Bengals. The rematch from 30 years ago. Joe Cool, Joe Montana versus the Bengals. And we're going to see that once again here in 2023. I'm pretty pumped up for this game, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty pumped up.
Nah, it's not going to happen. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to... And the other thing you're forgetting, man, you're not in San Francisco. This ain't Kansas anymore. You're in Philadelphia, buddy.
The 49ers have overcome the odds all season long. What do you mean?
Hey, you're in Philly now, buddy. Oh! See that?
This ain't the New York Football Giants, my friend.
Yeah? This ain't the Dallas Cowboys or Seattle Seahawks.
Dallas Cowboys are much better than the Giants.
Yeah. Philadelphia Eagles win. Let's go. Super Bowl. Here we come. Right.
Talking about teams that maybe won't be in the Super Bowl sometime soon, I want to talk about the New England Patriots, Brandon. They made a big move this last week, changing a pretty important position in the offensive structure, and that is hiring one Bill O'Brien to become the offensive coordinator. O'Brien, one that spent his last year, or Mac Jones' last year in Alabama, learned the offense from Mac himself. As a New England fan, where do you stand on this news for the Patriots? What do you grade it? And more so, what does this mean for Mac Jones going into an absolutely critical third season where it feels like a make or break it year with a third different play caller?
Yeah, third different play caller. First off, how I grade the move, I mean, I'll just give it a thumbs up, double thumbs up. I think job one is complete, which is hire a competent offensive coordinator. They did that. I was listening to Rob Gronkowski talk about Bill O'Brien and how he felt about the move, and he's a big Bill O'Brien supporter. He really gave a lot of praise to Bill O'Brien. So I'm really happy with this move. Now, job one is complete. Job two is go get the necessary weapons to support Mac Jones. That's the second job. Whether that be going to trade for DeAndre Hopkins or another receiver, whether that be to draft a receiver at the 14th overall pick, whatever that may be.
Just don't let O'Brien negotiate. That's the only thing.
Well, no, he's not going to go. Come on, John. Don't be silly. A Bill will be negotiating, but it won't be Bill O'Brien. It will be Bill Belichick. So yeah, just make the right necessary moves. I mean, the moves are out there to be made. I mean, they're staring you right in the face. If I can see it, Bill Belichick, somebody with probably the highest football IQ in all of football, should be able to see this. Like, it's right in front of them. And I made a terrible mistake last year. I think I was just, I don't know what that is. You would have to have be one of Bill Belichick's like close personal friends to be able to know what he was thinking. So we'll never know why those decisions were made because Bill will never tell us. So yeah, I'm happy. We're moving in the right direction, John. That's what we're doing. We're moving in the right direction. I think anybody with eyes can see that we're moving in the right direction, that this was the right move to make. Get Bill O'Brien, get a competent offensive coordinator. And like I said, you don't have to fire Matt Patricia. You don't have to fire Joe Judge. You just got to get him the hell out of the offensive side of football. It's like that old saying, you don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of my house. So move Joe Judge back to special teams where he freaking shined at, and put Matt Patricia in an assistant coach position, whatever, just so he can be Bill's talking buddy, drinking buddy, golf buddy, fishing buddy, whatever the hell he is.
Pencil buddy.
Yeah, pencil buddy. Well, no, I think Bill uses a pen actually.
Oh,
no, actually, no. No, I think Bill is also old-timey. I think he has a notepad, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
How do you even, if you have a pencil, John, your lists are laminated. How do you write on that?
I'm not sure. It's kind of crazy to me in hindsight. I kind of feel like I remember Bill O'Brien better as that Penn State coach. I'm not a Penn State fan. He spent 2 years there. To think about it, O'Brien was the Texans head coach for 7 seasons. Yeah. It did not feel like that long, but from 2014 to 2020, he was there. He is actually from New England, a former assistant for 5 years from 2007 to 2011 as the quarterback's offensive coordinator and offensive assistant. I thought this was a phenomenal move. It made sense given his experience in New England and also working with Brady. I think he is the best thing you could have gotten after losing McDaniels. It should have happened a year earlier. There's no doubt in my mind about that because that was a lost season for Mac Jones. I mean, New England has failed over and over again to really invest into the offensive side of the ball. And when you have a defensive front that damn good with some really good corners, it can work. You can have a pretty solid season. But if you want to, in this stage of the NFL, really get back to the heights you're once at, they have to, in the draft, invest a first or second round pick into receiver. And I'm talking more than a Tyquan Thornton. You know, he can take the top order of the defense, but they need a true wide receiver, number one, for Mac.
He has been completely forgotten in this offense last year. Like, you wouldn't even have known we drafted a receiver as high as we did because he was just lost. I know he was injured for a while at the start of the season, but even after that, he made some plays here, but it was just so inconsistent about who played and who didn't play. Moves I think we need to make. Nelson Aguilar, I believe, is a free agent. If he's not, he's got to go. Devontae Parker, you want to keep him? I don't know what his cap hit is. I don't think it's that bad, but if it's like anything too high, he's got to go. Keep Kendrick Bourne. He is openly stated he wants to stay on New England. He doesn't want to go anywhere.
He's gonna get big money though. He's the top wide receiver.
He's a free agent though. Kendrick Bourne.
Unrestricted. Yep.
No. He's not a free agent. Sorry, he's got 1 year left on his deal.
You sure?
Yeah, he signed a 3-year deal. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive. Jacoby Myers is the free agent. But
that's what I thought I said. My fault.
Oh, sorry. No, I was
talking about Jacoby.
No, I say Kendrick Bourne, but yeah, Jacoby Myers also. Jacoby Myers, we got to re-sign him. He can probably he might get franchise tag, but we do have a top 5 cap space in the in free agency or offseason this year. I'm trying to remember other receivers on the team. Well, Tyquan Thornton, he's obviously staying. Jonnu Smith, he's got, I think, the second highest cap hit on the team. Listen, either he needs to restructure that contract or he's got to go. He's got to go because he's been unproductive the last 2 years. He's been injured. And even when he's been on the field, he's dropped passes and he made inconsistent plays. He's been a complete and utter letdown. So either he needs to restructure his deal or he's got to go because it has not worked out. Running back wise, Ramondre, we're good. Damian Harris is a free agent. We might be able to get him back on a low budget deal if we want to because he didn't have a great season this year. Mm-hmm. But even if we let him go, New England's very good at replacing running backs and getting new ones and whatnot. We'll probably draft another Alabama running back. in like the third round or something.
Yeah, or
Uh,
Smith has a $19 million dead cap, so they can't even cut him. They'd have
no,
to be
not cut
traded.
him. Yeah, definitely not
Yeah,
cut him, but like trade partner.
yeah, for sure. I don't know who would want him,
But,
but
well, you got to find a idiot, a sucker's born every day, as they say. Maybe Josh McDaniels likes him in Vegas. Darren
great culture
Waller.
piece.
Yeah, great culture piece. Uh, but yeah, I think getting DeAndre Hopkins is a great move. I know it's kind of a pipe dream to some people, but I think it's realistic. I think we're one of the top teams going to get him. I'm not giving up that 14th overall pick for him though. No, no. That's I'll give you 2 seconds, or I'll give you next year's first and this year's third, but you're not getting the 14th overall pick from us. That for me is untouchable. That pick. We as New England, we don't get those high picks. We haven't seen many of them, so we have to covet them when we have them. They got
So
to
where's
be
that
like,
pick go?
huh?
So where's that coveted pick go, Brandon?
Who do we draft?
What position? What's the area of need that you'd attack? Or maybe
All
is it
right,
just you let the board speak to you?
it depends. Because it depends on where we're at, how free agency looks. Do we get DeAndre Hopkins? Because if we get D Hop, there's no need to draft a receiver that high because we'd have D Hop, we'd re-sign Jacoby Myers, we'd have Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, we'd have enough at receiving core. Um, Probably maybe an offensive tackle because I think Wynn is probably out the door. Trent Brown might get cut. So maybe a tackle or a defensive piece if Bill wants to go defense.
That'd be crazy to let the defense what
Yeah.
they already have.
It's
They have
probably most likely going to go either, if we get D Hop, it's probably going to go either offensive tackle or a defensive piece.
so some contract, well, I guess some salary stuff. They have $32 million in cap space. D Hop's cap hit would be $30 million. So I do think he's. I mean, that's the thing. If Chase Claypool went for a top 32 pick, you have to think that DeAndre Hopkins will. But I mean, his entire career has been traded for nothing. The one time he is, given that cap hit and the fact he's right at 30 years old, there is a case you can get him for something a little bit less than their first round pick, but it would have to be a couple of day two picks easily.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's what I said. Yeah.
If you
Two
can't get
seconds.
DeAndre Hopkins, the next best player for me that would be available would be T. Higgins. But I mean, let me think here. After T, I mean, it would be a year to get Higgins anyway. So I don't know, man. I feel like
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins is he's so high up in your board, and there's really not other receiver like a DJ Moore that would be available. So I think you guys really are one of the top suitors for him realistically now.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think I know that $32 million you said is cap space. I've read other places that it's higher, so I know it probably varies. And by free agency time or end of the season, we'll probably get a much clearer picture of how much it really is. But
That's pre-cut. So
yeah, so I think we've got a good cap space. I think obviously Bill's going to make some moves where people get cut or restructure contracts to make space here and there. So I'm not really worried about DeAndre's cap hit. If anything, they might restructure his contract or something like that. So yeah, I'm fine with that. Also, a guy who's on the trade block too. I'm not saying we have to get him, but he's a good piece and he would fit New England perfectly. Is Hunter Renfro.
hmm.
Because I know Darren,
Love the
again,
kid.
like we've said for the past since we've been on air with each other, Hunter Renfro and Darren Waller have been on the trade block like for the past 2 years. They got put back on the trade block. There's rumors that they're shopping and seeing what they can get for those two guys. So yeah,
Yeah, I feel like with Jacoby, you wouldn't really need Renfro, but
yeah,
he
you
is an
wouldn't.
upgrade.
He's
Definitely.
he's a really good slot player. Like I said, he just the Amendolas, the Chris Hogans, the Welkers, the Edelmans. He just fits that role perfectly.
Mm,
Adam Schefter, Jets are hiring Nathaniel Hackett as their OC.
no way. That's good.
Yep.
I'm partially laughing at the hilarity in it. Hackett
Oh,
was
does that
fine.
mean the rumors are about to go wild, John, of Aaron Rodgers to New York, just like they did last year with Denver? Everybody's like, "Oh, Nathaniel Hackett, we're getting Rodgers." Is Rodgers gonna do it again to people? Is he gonna
Joe
get the
Namath giving
hopes
up 12.
all the way up just to hold the rug right underneath them? Wow, that's an interesting move.
It is an interesting move. For Hackett, at least, he was a good I feel like he was a good OC in Green Bay, but he's sipping tea with Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know. For the
I
Jets,
do
what
like
does
him.
that move mean? It's
Yeah.
quite clear you can't draft the quarterback. You're going to go out and trade for one. This ultimately, for a second straight offseason, comes down to what Rodgers wants, it feels like. If does
Yeah.
he want to go to New York? Because that's the only way the Packers will have some level of pressure. The only way. They don't have ownership deal, and like he's certainly not anything like a Jim Irsay. He's not going to go to New York.
I
that's
don't think
that's
so
the
either.
funny thing here.
I don't think
So
so.
for the Jets, what quarterback do they acquire then? Lamar's probably not. I don't think they're going to end up with Lamar. Ah, man.
I don't think so
This
either.
could have the makings of something that just happened in Denver where you hire an offensive play designer before you have your quarterback. The two do not mesh, and the offense massively disappoints relevant to the expectations. Oh, man. I don't know.
I
Who else
think
would want to
Derek
be the
Carr,
Jets OC? I'm not sure.
I think Derek Carr is probably their best shot.
Oh, man. I guess
But
that
yeah,
is
I
the
know.
best option, man.
Yep. New York is New York, man. This is what they are, John. I love it though. Isn't it great? We just get news for New England. We're moving in the right direction. We got Bill O'Brien back, and now the Jets move. They make a move, and it looks like the Jets are going this way, and Patriots are going this way. It's just happy times. Everything's back normal. Now we just need the Bills to fall apart. We
On to
love our
basketball.
Bills.
Anthony
AD.
Davis. Anthony Davis made his return in the Lakers win last night versus the Spurs. And typically when you watch the Spurs this year, it's hard, especially after their best player down Vassell under microscopic knee surgery. 104 to 113 for the Lakers. Rui Hachimura, 12 points off the bench. I feel like we're starting to disregard, and we have at least disregarded as NBA fans. The NBA world has completely overlooked the Lakers because last year's team was a joke. They gave up on Frank Vogel, whether or not it was fully his fault, and management for the Lakers is mostly a joke. But this team this season is different. And when I look at what LeBron has done last night, the guy had 20 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds. All things considered for the Lakers, when you have two top 10 players and just a decent supporting cast with a solid young head coach still implementing the scheme here, you look at the state of the Western Conference, and currently speaking, the fifth seed, we talked about this on our last show, is 26 and 24. That team is the LA Clippers. The 13th seeded Lakers, who are 2.5 games behind them, are 23 and 26. The Lakers have been playing competitive basketball without AD. The last 10-15 games, which they've been missing their best player, they've had really tight-knit losses versus teams like the 76ers. They've had really good wins getting the business done. When you add in Rui Hachimura off the bench, who is an immediate upgrade off of what they already had, and then, I mean, Lonnie Walker and Austin Reeves missed the last couple of weeks as well. It's their two best forwards. I feel like there's a real case here the Lakers can escape the playing tournament as a top 6 seed. And if Anthony Davis is healthy down the stretch, if the Kings play the Lakers in the first round, I think the Lakers could upset them pretty easily because they have just more stars that late in games you can trust. Now, the Kings this year have been a better team, all things considered, but the Kings defense is terrible. The Lakers defense with Anthony Davis has some hope. Offensively speaking, LeBron or AD, DeMontis Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox. I mean, you have to look at the supporting cast as well, and the Kings have a much better supporting cast. I feel like this Lakers team is a massive sleeper to win a playoff series this year. Not that it's like, oh my god, wow, AD and LeBron won a playoff series, but rather they can go on a run here in a Western Conference that is as wide open as ever. But the same thing that the Lakers are struggling with, which is depth, supporting cast, and surely injuries, is the same exact thing the Warriors, the Timberwolves, the Trailblazers, the Suns, the Timberwolves, and even to some degree the Mavericks have struggled with this season. It feels like all those teams have the same issues, and ultimately, whichever ones come out the healthiest of that bunch is going to make the playoffs and really have a run here against teams like the Nuggets or the Kings in the first round.
And I don't. You didn't. You mentioned. I don't think you mentioned. Also, I'm pretty sure the Lakers are one of the bottom teams in terms of 3-point shooting, right?
Oh yeah, they've.
Yeah. I mean, I know LeBron and Russell Westbrook are two of the worst 3-point shooters in terms of percentage this year. Like they rank like 114 out of whatever the hell. But um, Yeah, they struggle with that. Um, these next 3 games, they got tough next 3 games. They got a road trip. All 3 games. They got Boston on Saturday night, ABC primetime. Then they travel to Brooklyn. That's going to be on NBA TV Monday night. And then they travel to, well, they stay in New York, but they go to the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden Tuesday night, back to back on TNT. So it was a tough 3 game road trip. They probably, what are they? They're 23 and 26, so they're 3 games out of 500. What do you think, John? You think they got to go at least 2-1 in that
In this
stretch?
stretch, they have to
Yeah,
take care of business in New York.
yeah.
I doubt they beat
Both
the
in both in
Celtics.
both New York teams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Nets without Kevin Durant, he's looking to come back before the All-Star break, but I don't think he'll be by the 30th.
No.
The best second night of the back-to-back, Anthony Davis, I doubt would play.
Yeah.
Last night he came off the bench, and defensively, he gives them just an immediate floor. With him on the floor, you're going to be competent because of his rim protection. He had 4 blocks. And that defensive rebounding. Like Thomas Bryant offensively, he's been pretty good, but he
Hmm.
is one of the worst starting defensive centers in the league. And then AD as well is much more capable guarding out in space, even if he's immobile half the time, because he has the length and some of the instinctual just elements. After that stretch, the Lakers got the Pacers, the
Hmm.
Pelicans, the Thunder, and the Bucks. After that, the Warriors and Trailblazers. So this entire stretch coming up, this is going to decide their season. How well they play in January and February will dictate whether or not they're going to be a full-time buyer at the deadline. Now, the thing for the Lakers is they need three-point shooting, like you desperately said. They're one of the
Hmm.
worst teams this year. LeBron making just 30% of them. I don't know if there's a deal good enough out there for the Lakers to give up their 2027 and 2029 firsts. The trade deadline last year was way better, and I mean infinitely more, I guess, agreeable. Whereas this trade deadline for the Lakers, the best option on the table is Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Do you want to commit that $30 million to them when this offseason you're going to have the flexibility for a more fruitful option, so to speak, with some
Yeah.
unrestricted free agents?
I don't think Miles Turner should be in that deal anymore now that you got I keep forget how to say his name. Hachimura?
Rui Hachimura?
Hachimura, okay. So yeah, once you get him, I don't think Miles Turner, you really need him, especially with AD coming back and Bryant playing as well as he has. I think Buddy Hield is just the guy. I don't know what you give up to get him. So
He's probably worth a protected first round pick because
yeah.
in Indiana, Hield has bought him more and more to the marksman role, shooting 42% from deep. He's averaging 17 points per game as well. So, like for the Lakers, that's probably one of the 5 or 6 best shooters in the league.
Yeah.
And just to add that into the equation, it does balance out, remedies a lot of their issues in the half court. And what you said with Turner, it's true because AD this year has played more center. And so if that's where AD is best and Turner's playing the 4, you're not maximizing Turner shortly. It's really
Mhm.
just, to me, kind of an insurance policy for when AD gets healthy. You have that elite shot blocker and pretty good all around defender that can space it out. Um, yeah, I'm not going to go as far as say they're going to beat the Kings in the first round of the playoffs, but if AD can, avoid this navicular injury he's had and he doesn't re-aggravate it, I think they're probably the biggest sleeper to rise up in the Western Conference. And it's not really crazy to say, but it's fascinating when you look at the grand scheme of the conference when you've seen a team that last year missed the playoffs, this year has 2 top 15 players, or top 10 players, honestly, when they've both been healthy, and they're just 1 or 2 pieces away from really getting into the upper echelon.
Mhm.
And there's probably going to be some players out there on the market that we're not expecting right now to get moved, and they will. But currently speaking, what are those 2 pieces for the Lakers? Boyan Bogdanovic, the Pistons want unprotected first round pick. No, thank you. Okay. He's been really good this season, but I don't think he's worth an unprotected first, quite frankly.
Mhm.
John Collins in Atlanta, he's more of a pick and roll style big. Don't think he's a fit. Lauri Markkanen is way too expensive for the
He's a
Jazz to even
shooter.
consider it. And then you look at some teams in the Eastern Conference, Kyle Kuzma. I mean, the Wizards are hell bent on re-signing him, so there's not many better alternatives, I think, to that Indiana package. Even D'Angelo Russell, like Russell Westbrook has been too good a playmaker to say that swapping
Mhm.
him for D'Angelo Russell is going to make them a better team, especially given the cost it's going to take to move off a player like Russ, which will probably be a first rounder.
Yeah, I just think I think they need what we've been saying they've needed for the past year and a half as a shooter. They need shooters. And I don't know who those shooters are that out there that they can get. Like Buddy Hield has been mentioned countless times, but like you said, it's a tough deal to make, especially with how the Lakers are positioned right now. I mean, there's no like, like back like years ago, not even years ago, but like 5, 6 years ago, you'd have like a guy like a JJ Redick out there you could go get, or a Kyle Korver or something like Ray Allen back in the day, those dead eyes. But I
Hmm.
really don't see that right now. I mean, Duncan Robinson maybe, but that's a big cap hit. It's
Yeah.
close to 20 million.
Be on your Bucks after this offseason too,
Yeah,
so it
that's a
really
tough, that's
tell
a
you
tough
what.
sell right there. Yeah, I don't know who really is out there for them to go get. I don't know. Is maybe there's a free agent, a veteran 3-point sniper out there. I don't even really know. Maybe they call J.R. Smith. Who knows? I don't.
I think I think he's been done for a little bit. There are those players like Buddy Hield and Boyan, but what the teams want for them is
Yeah, it's
not
too
very
much.
agreeable of what the Lakers are
Yeah,
willing to give up, given their
yeah.
age, because they not only need a really good shooter, like a marksman such as Redick style, but they need a
Mhm.
player that, when AD or LeBron's out of the lineup, can then create an efficient offense for
Yeah.
themselves and their teammates. So Buddy Hield, like he's an elite shooter, but he hasn't fit that next category of kind of a Chris Middleton. That's exactly what they need. A player
Yeah.
with an agreeable on and off ball game that can knock down a 3-point shot at a high rate. But even then, Middleton this year's barely played.
Mhm.
So I feel like we've had this conversation a couple of times now with the Lakers. It's just going to be wait and see mode from this point out, and see how Hachimura gets integrated off the bench. And if AD, most importantly, can, I say this a couple of times, if he re-aggravates this navicular injury, it's probably going to be a season-ending surgery for a stress fracture.
Yeah. So on the other side of the team that lives in the basement of LA, it looks like they're trying to make moves too. They've been talking about maybe getting a point guard. Um, I think the two guys to me that make sense if they're going to go out and get one are a Mike Conley or a Kyle Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of like the molds that I think they're looking for. A defensive-minded point guard who can also play make and shoot the ball. That's what a veteran too. That's what I think that they're looking for right now.
The Clippers are in the weird spot, I feel like, in the NBA because they're always the team at the deadline that's going to buy because Steve Ballmer is willing to spend. And they have their
Hmm.
pick in 2028 with some swaps as well. The issue with the Clippers is, and we've had this discussion with the Boston Celtics, many people, when you have this much tied into Kawhi and Paul George, you're probably not going to find that right point guard. Like Mike Conley, he'll be a great fit playing besides them, probably the best one.
Hmm.
But the question is, how does a point guard play when he's really the third fiddle to those two guys? So the Clippers desperately need a third option. Norman Powell's not been that this year. John Wall's one of the most. I mean, you talk about Westbrook shot making. Wall's been way worse this year. He's been one of the most destructive shooters. Fred VanVleet, you're going to have to pay over $100 million to because rebuilding teams that have a ton of cap space this offseason that see him as a perfect plug and play piece are going to throw him a lot of money. So I
Yeah.
don't think Fred VanVleet's on the table for the Clippers. One first round pick, anyways, is probably not enough to get him. Kyle Lowry's contract, you want to take that on for next season? I would doubt so because it's harder to move that. So you got the tail in the background.
Hmm.
And Mike Conley. Conley would have to probably go for a first round pick. I think that's the move here. Does Mike Conley get traded to the Clippers for their 2028 selection? That would make the most sense. But other than that, the Clippers, what they've needed all along is just the continuity with this core, which they're struggling to overall get. But the second thing is that third player for when Kawhi and PG are out of the lineup. Can a player take on a high enough usage and then other nights be the fourth option in the offense?
Hmm.
And at the same time can just hold up defensively. So I doubt Larry goes, but Mike Conley is a name to look out for at this year's
Yeah,
deadline.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
With all that being said, is there anything else you'd like to add on to before we wrap up the show?
Um, just there's some news out there in the MMA world, the UFC world, that apparently um Conor McGregor has been contacted to do the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if you know what the Ultimate Fighter is, John. It's basically like a reality TV show based thing. They get I forget how many fighters it is. I think it's 8 on each side. They kind of have two coaches that are UFC fighters, and they draft the teams, and then those fighters live in a house together, and it's kind of like a reality series based like real world, but they fight each other and do like a tournament, and then they build up to the championship fight to see who gets a UFC contract. So Connor said he was contacted about that. He's done it once before. And I think it's desperately it's a desperate need for the Ultimate Fighter, because their race since they brought it back have not been very good. It's on ESPN Plus. It hasn't been very entertaining. And one thing about Conor McGregor is he's highly entertaining and he's much watched TV. When he's on your TV, you have to watch because he's just captivating. So if he's on there, I'm going to be watching. I think it's gonna be highly entertaining, and it's just a step in the right direction of seeing the notorious Conor McGregor make his return back in the octagon.
I can imagine with his energy how fun that would be to kind of just him. The amount of testosterone in that house is probably pretty
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So
Oh
I
yeah.
have one thing we have to talk about. Your good friend Damian Lillard, Brandon, dropped the most efficient 60-point game last night. What Damian Lillard is doing right now is the same exact thing Steph Curry did in 2021. The guy over his last 8 games is averaging 40 points, playmaking like no tomorrow, and he's shooting over 40% from three-point. The guy's one of the greatest shooters of all time, but he's getting to the rim more. He's not. That's not true. He's getting to the foul line more, over 10 times during the stretch, but he's also finishing slightly better at the rim. Last night versus the Jazz, he diced that defense apart every manner possible, splitting double teams, knocking down shots in the McDonald's logo. I think it was at the Moda Center. And even better yet, he's making up and under reverse finishes, a couple of which hitting in the air, adjusting to traffic. The guy has been unbelievable in his age 33 season, but the Trailblazers roster is super top heavy after their top 3 players. Their one and only center, Yusuf Nurkic, is slow, plodding, constantly injured, constantly in foul trouble, doesn't bring much energy. He's not versatile whatsoever. Oh, man. The Blazers have reportedly been willing to buy this deadline to make an extra move to really put them in contention to make a playoff run here. But, dude, what Damian Lillard, what Dame is doing, playing at a Kobe-like level, quite frankly, as a scorer on a team that at best is like a 6 or 7 seed, given their limitations. They're not a very good defensive team. Ah, oh, man, get ready for it. I just kind of wonder what Dame could be if you paired him up with a Devin Booker. If you paired him up with another top 15 player with some defensive structure, how good could Portland be? Right now, I look at this team, 23rd ranked defense. It's almost kind of sad to know that all of this is going to go to waste in many ways. And Brandon, I kind of want to get your takeaway here because he's still playing at an All-NBA level, and almost none of this matters, it feels like, in the grand scheme
Mm-hmm.
of things.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, where's the wins going? Where's the championships? There are none. Um, yeah, I mean, we all know Devin Booker is a better player than CJ McCollum. That's no knock on CJ. It's just Devin Booker's better, and that team was able to get to the Western Conference Finals. So if you put Devin Booker in there, you just think that a finals appearance would be in the cards. I don't know. I really I don't know what to say about Damian Lillard anymore. We know he's a phenomenal player. It's just at the end of the day, you're 33 years old now. You're not 22. Like a Devin Booker, where you can just pile up a bunch of great stats and show how great of a player you are, but on a bad team, and then you can start winning your championships. No, now you're starting to get into those um, twilight years of your career, and what's his contract right? Is he on like a 5-year contract extension still? He's still got a bunch of years left.
They gave him an agreeable short-term extension this last offseason, but it was over $50 million. So his
Mm-hmm.
current contract outlook, it was a 2-year extension, is up until the 2027 offseason, where he has a $63 million player option in his age 36 season.
Yeah.
So he's got 4 more years. Actually, 2023, 2024, 20. So he's got 4 more years after
Yeah.
this season.
So again, it's just like I guess we're going to be talking about the same thing for the next 4 years. Damian Lillard playing great player. Wins are non-existent.
Portland should trade him. Like, think about what the Blazers could get if they traded Damian Lillard. The guy's playing at a top 12, top 15 level, and for a team out there like the Suns that has all of their draft picks but feels like they're a piece away, Dame would immediately make any team with a top 12, top 15 player a legitimate contender. The Blazers are too top heavy. And what's going on right now in Portland is the issue, the reason why they're not winning is because, much like Miami a few years ago when they could have made a move, but they held on to Tyler Hero, the Blazers are stuck between two different eras. They have Anthony Simons and Shane Sharp. And then Nasir Little, Dame, Yusuf Nurkic. The Blazers need to pick a damn side, man. They've been for far too long now straddling each of the two lanes. You can only pick one at this point. You know, you're not Golden State where you have such a good core that these young guys can sit under the ranks and develop. No, you don't have that luxury. You have to make a choice. Are you going to keep Shane Sharp and let him develop? If that's the case, you should be moving Dame because while he's going to mentor Shane Sharp, the reality is you can tank, get some really good draft picks, and this year it's too late because you're way too good. You have 20 plus wins. But what I'm getting at here is you can add 4 or 5 first round picks along with the increased odds of your own first round picks if you move Dame. But at the same time, if you were to move a Shane Sharp, he's like a 4.5-star prospect probably. To me, he reminds me a ton of Anthony Edwards and Zach LaVine. You could get realistically a star from a team like, let's say, oh man, it's tough here to think of one that fits well enough next to Dame. Okay, the Wizards are surely not moving Bradley Beal.
Nope.
Shane Sharp's value is at the level of which you can easily get a top 25 player, a Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah,
and so that's where I'm at currently with the Blazers.
Yeah, that doesn't move anything. Getting a Pascal, it doesn't. But does Dame have a no trade clause?
He has a trade restriction because of his newly signed extension, but yeah, I don't think he has a trade clause.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, yeah, I know because we've talked about this before, and I know Dame has publicly said like he doesn't want to leave Portland. So again, I don't really know, man.
I love that he's Mr. Blazer, but I can kind of see where this is going, and it doesn't seem like very far.
It's a circle. It's literally the definition of insanity.
Well, this is what he kind of wants in many ways, to win a championship in Portland or nowhere else, which you can respect, but as a fan, it's disappointing. It feels like Kobe in those middle years where he's averaging 34 a game, but it didn't mean much. They're getting knocked out the Lakers in the first round, if at that. So, all of that being said, that will wrap up episode number 69 of the Wisecast podcast. I'm John Tortorelli with my co-host Brandon Capozziello, and as always, we'll see you next time.
Stay classy.